So I have with me today the first place Code Talker deck list from the remote Duel Extravaganza in Argentina. And this was piloted by a Ruben Figueredo, and I believe it also won a Win-A-Mat from the same event. So it won first place twice at the same event. Now, I'm not just talking about this deck because it is a Code Talker deck list, but specifically because it is a control Code Talker deck list that is not using Code Talker Heat Soul. If you know anything about how to run this deck in the OCG, that card is extremely important. And if you have a desire to run this deck early, this is a good list to look into. So the matchups for this event were Zoo, Zombie, Tri-Brigade Lyrilusk, Prank Kids, and Zoo Eldritch. And I will be leaving a link in the description of the video for the original deck profile, as well as a link at the end of the video. So if you have a desire to watch that, it'll be there. Do know, I believe it is in Spanish though, so if there is a language barrier, just be aware of that. So let's go ahead and get into some replays so that you can have an idea of how to run this deck without the use of Code Talker Heat Soul. So without the existence of Code Talker Heat Soul, this deck does have one kind of obvious problem. You don't have the draw power that you would normally have. What makes the deck so good in the OCG is the fact that you can just continually draw into spells and traps, specifically traps, that allow you to just kind of win the game from there. Now this deck does have a solution to that. It's not as good as Heat Soul, but it does let you draw cards, and that is Swap Cleric. When Swap Cleric is used for a Link summon, the monster can decrease attack by 500 and then you can draw a card. And it is a hard once per turn, but it does help you dig into your deck. Now Swap Cleric does have some interesting synergy with specifically Cyburst Gadget and the Link 1s. So worst case scenario, you normal summon it, link off into a Link 1, and then just draw a card. Now, in terms of drawing with your Link monsters, we do of course have access to Shooting Code Talker. Shooting Code Talker, what it lets you do is it has one down pointing arrow, one up pointing arrow, and an arrow pointing to the left. For each card that it points to, it gains one additional attack during the battle phase. And at the end of the battle phase, you get to draw a card up to the number of cards destroyed by battle with Shooting Code Talker. So there are actually some scenarios where Shooting Code Talker is better than Code Talker Heat Soul. Obviously it's not as versatile because you don't get to draw a card going first, but if you're going second and you can set it up in order to get over 3 monsters, you get to draw 3 cards, and those are cards that you immediately have access to and can set same turn. Another big benefit here is you don't necessarily always have to OTK your opponent. Because you're playing so many traps, if you can just draw into enough traps, set all of them, there's a good chance you have more negates than your opponent has cards. Especially if they're playing some kind of a combo deck where not all of the cards in their hand are going to be viable. There's also some metagame applications, as decks like Eldritch are floating around, and they just kind of leave out monsters due to their traps. If you can use Shooting Code Talker in order to get over those monsters, you can turn all of those into pluses for you. I also wanted to briefly mention how amazing Crackdown is in this deck. A lot of your monsters specifically require Cyburst, but there are some very good ones that don't. Code Talker, Transcode Talker, and Access Code Talker just require effect monsters, and you can even use Transcode Talker same turn. Since you aren't special summoning anything besides a Cyburst monster, you're just using the monster that you took on the opponent's turn. Now, because the only card that we're really missing is Code Talker Heat Soul, we still have access to every other card the OCG likes to use in this deck, meaning this is pretty much a high tier deck that's just missing its boss monster. It's kind of like whenever a deck gets hit on the Forbidden and Limited list and it still tops at tournaments. It still has everything it needs in order to do well. It just doesn't have that really unfair card anymore. So you still have a lot of tools at your disposal, and trap cards are just really good this format, so you are in a really good position kind of just to begin with. And of course you have access to a searchable counter trap that is, in my opinion, one of the best in the game. The fact that it not only banishes the card that it negates, but the opponent also cannot use cards of the same name until the end of the next turn. And of course, you still have all of your easy advantage monsters in the deck that the trap cards are there to support. As long as you can just keep your advantage rolling and use your trap cards correctly, you can win some games against some very good decks. So I definitely want to give props to Mr. Ruben Figueredo for topping with this deck. I love the innovation of Swap Cleric, and I guarantee this deck would not have topped without a good pilot. But the fact that this deck topped, even without the release of Decode Docker Heat Soul, just goes to show how good this deck can be once we do get Heat Soul. And I think once we do, it is definitely going to be a very good choice moving forward. Even if it's not all that popular, I think it is going to be a strong deck. Now, in terms of the time being, I'm probably going to be sticking with the combo variant of Code Talkers, but if you'd like to give this deck a try, I would definitely recommend it. The trap cards make a lot of matchups quite a bit easier. I'm going to be sticking with combo primarily just because of Ibli. I think that card is incredibly unfair right now, and there's a lot of matchups that just kind of auto-lose to it. And unfortunately, Control Code Talkers kind of just have a hard time fitting in Ibli. It's largely unnecessary for their general game plan, and I'm just having a lot of fun ruining people's days with Ibli right now. But definitely don't let my opinion sway you away from playing this version of the deck. There's a lot of matchups that are just significantly easier, and as you can see in a lot of these combos, you plus very easily and can take advantage of the trap cards very well. Once again, link to the original deck profile is in the description, or at the end of the video if you'd like to go over there and give that a like. Thanks for watching the video. Tell me in the comments section down below what you'd like to see next, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.